that all sounds well and good, but how do you actually put that process together of managing a request? And some of the issues are like, how do you do that when you don't have buy-in from everyone involved, or workflows, or whatever? So in general, you do want to think about workflows, and these could be something with a system like the Data Cookbook, or like whatever ticketing system you have right now that you probably could leverage for something like this, or even simple kind of one-step workflows that you could manage, with sort of simple tools. But the important thing is that once a request comes in, you want to figure out how to route the request to the correct steward role or subject matter expert for that creation, action, or review. We usually think about sort of 4 different types of stewards. There might be more, but your sort of functional domain expert, like, is this sort of a functional question, or is it a technical expert, or is it more like a policy or other relevant expertise, or is it like an access kind of owner issue? So we have a whole best practices on data stewards and the 4 types of data stewards, where we talk about your subject matter experts and your owners and your accountability roles. So that could be help you to figure out how to define what those roles are. And one of the things important to know is that you're rarely going to find someone who can do all of those things within an area. So you have to kind of think about who's the right person to ask. So tools like your ticketing systems, or like a data governance solution, oftentimes have ways to define that that workflow or those steward roles. Like the Cookbook does that by having by sort of content category and functional area and tools and data systems. It's able to route that, like, oh, I've got a data quality issue in human resources in our payroll data warehouse or whatever, that could go to a certain routing, and understanding that relationship. And then, but sometimes it's even more simple than that. You just have, like, for every data system, you just know, like, oh, who's the owner or who's the primary point of contact, and then they can go from there. So you can come up with your own little systems of managing that routing. However, if you don't want to deal with this level of complexity and this level of recruiting and definition and organizational structure off the top, you can set something that basically, for either everything or for everything that isn't yet has a defined role, is to route that to some sort of oversight group where there isn't a defined steward, right? And this would be like the example I was saying with the help desk, where it goes to a triage, first tier 1 kind of support person who takes that issue, maybe tries to answer it themselves, or they are capable to and empowered to go find an expert. That expert doesn't have to be an existing data steward. They can just be someone in the organization who is an expert and say, hey, can you help us with this question? This seems to be up your alley, right? And then they can serve as the proxy to engage with that collaborator, or they can pull that collaborator in depending on what your tool is. If you've done this, which we'll cover this in a little bit more detail, this concept of the triage role, but if you're doing this, this is a really good way to actually recruit people to be these steward roles. If you take nothing away from this conversation than what I'm about to say next, I'll be happy, because this next thing is really important, is that I think that what is the biggest killer of a data governance initiative is that they go out and the first thing they do is you define these steward roles, right? And then you tell all these people, oh, you're a data steward. And then they go to those data stewards and say, okay, first thing we want you to do is I need you to write 20 definitions and to document your last 50 reports, and to do give them a whole bunch of homework that's totally in a vacuum, right? That aren't tied to any person out there that's asking this question. It's just like, go through all this old stuff that you've done and document it. And it is no surprise that oftentimes these people are like, they either don't do it, or they close down, or they push back, or whatever, or they begrudgingly do it, and they don't want to be involved anymore after that. So if instead their first experience as an expert, maybe you've had some sort of launch of this data governance initiative, they understand what it is, they understand what a steward role is, but no one's asked them to do anything yet. They don't even know they're a steward. But then someone comes to them and says, hey, John, or hey, Deb, or hey, Reese, you are an expert on this thing. There's a question here from Ida who wants to know, if this data is PII or how you're calculating this, can you help answer this question? There's an open request about that. Go and get them involved, maybe write a new glossary definition into this or update the report spec or whatever, and get back to IDA. So after that happens, you route this to approval. Maybe there's a second layer where it's going to go to someone to be like, oh, Marcy, is that right? How we define that? Or if you don't need that, it would go back to IDA saying, hey, I got this answer. Is this what you want? And she would say, okay, great. She closes it out, and then you've updated the knowledge base, and John is left with a fairly rewarding experience for having helped IDA, had marginal interruption to his day to have done that. And then if you say, you know what, hey, the next time a question like that comes in, would you be willing to do that? And you can set, say, would you be willing to be the, functional steward for that area, or the technical, whatever that, whatever that is. And if they say yes, that's great, then you sort of add that into the process. And maybe then you could say, while you're at it, there's like 3 things that we'd like to have documented. But starting off with that, hey, go do a whole bunch of busy work, homework that may not be relevant to anybody before you do, before anything gets rolled out is not the way to handle this. So anyway, that's how that recommended process to handle the request.